Hi, I'm Jack and I work at the Proteomics facility, the MRC Toxicology Unit. And I'm going to show you a day in the life of a single sample as it makes its way through the facility. I work with a lot of different researchers and projects to answer their questions by finding out how much of different types of proteins there are in cells. I break down these cells to get the individual proteins out. Then I break those proteins down to sequences of amino acids called peptides. In the mass spectrometer, these peptides are collided together so that they break down into fragments. Once these are detected, we can use software to reconstruct the peptides and proteins in the computer. The first part of each journey is to determine what the total amount of protein is we have in our samples. I do this by adding a component which binds to the proteins and can be made to emit light in a particular wavelength that we can measure. I'm going to do this with a tiny amount of my sample, then go get a quick cup of coffee before I get the readout and carry on with the rest of the process. I break up my cells with a little bit of detergent. Then I add compounds that protect my proteins from the digestion process. I add this to a filter, which I'm going to use to clean away all the remnants of these compounds and anything that's not proteins. This will take a few rounds of spinning in the centrifuge. After that, I'm going to add the enzyme trypsin, which digests the proteins down to peptides by specifically cutting after every arginine and lysine amino acid, thus giving us specific and predictable amino acid sequences. What happens is, once they're digested, these smaller peptide chains will pass through the filter, allowing them to be collected later. This takes overnight, but luckily I have one I prepared earlier. We'll get back to that after I've had some lunch. First, make sure I've collected all my peptides by washing through my filter. Then I'm going to pass them through a column that helps me clean out anything that I don't want getting into the mass spectrometer, principally salts. These are now ready to go, so it's one last coffee and then off to the mass spectrometry lab. I've loaded the peptides into glass vials which fit into the carousel of the HPLC connected to the mass spectrometer. This separates the peptides via chromatography before they're then injected onto the mass spectrometer in a very fine spray and ionized. The mass of the peptides are determined, and some of those are held back in an ion trap before being collided with each other in order to fragment them into smaller chains. The masses of these fragments are what are used to determine which amino acids are in peptides and in what order. Once I've started the sequence on the mass spectrometer, it'll take a few days, so once again, I'm very lucky that I have some data I prepared earlier. Use specialized software to compare the mass information we just got to predicted information generated by doing the whole digestion in the computer and seeing how well they match up. I'll set up the search and start it running, and hopefully we'll get some useful biological insights out of the data that comes out. Of course, it might just show that nothing much is happening, but that's science.